Hello students, welcome to Rao's IAS Focus Weekly. Today on 27th of February 2025, I'll be discussing the important current affairs of the past 1 week in the subject of science and technology. I'll be covering the current affairs from 20th of February 2025 till 26th of February 2025, and out of all the topics, there were 3 topics of very high importance that were there in the past 1 week. So today's discussion is going to be short, but I hope you can understand it is equally important as any other current affair. So the first topic of our discussion is Project 75I. Now Project 75I, it is a visionary and a very landmark initiative for for development of indigenous submarines for Indian Navy. Now to start with our discussion here, let's see. So very recently, DRDO of India, they have approved the proposal. They have basically submitted the proposal to the Cabinet Committee on Security, for approvals of the Project 75I. Now, what is Project 75I? It is an old initiative, guys. This initiative was earlier in news in the year 2017. In the year 2017, this Project 75I became an important initiative. It is considered as a successor to the Project 75. Now, to give you a holistic picture, let me start from the historical background of this development. Now, guys, what happened? We all realize a fact that when it comes to defense technology, there is no doubt that defense indigenization is an important criteria. It's an important characteristic of future's development in space tech, in defense technology. We all understand that India is considered as one of the strongest countries in the world, but there is still a big challenge that we face, and that is indigenization of defense technology. We are still heavily dependent on various countries for our defense military supplies. We all are aware that more than 50% of our military hardware is still from Russia. So it's very obvious that if more than 50% hardware comes from just Russia, we can never be stronger than Russia in that case, right? And I hope you understand that Russia is not the problem here. The problem is our poor indigenization of defense requirements. So one important objective of the government is to keep promoting more and more indigenous manufacturing of defense military hardware. India should have the infrastructure, India should have the ecosystem to manufacture more indigenous military hardware. So in the strive of developing more indigenous military hardware, India on and off keeps signing agreements with different countries to transfer their technology to us, right? So there is one initiative that India has taken up. It's called the Project 75. Under the Project 75, India has acquired, I have covered this Project 75 in one of the previous Focus Weeklies also. Under the Project 75, India have decided to acquire Scorpene submarines. Scorpene is a submarine from France. It's a very capable attack submarine, and this particular submarine, there were 6 of these submarines that India has acquired. But the interesting thing is, out of these 6, 3 of them were manufactured in France and other 3 were manufactured in India, were made in India. So this becomes a very clear, plan in which India is promoting not just better militarization of the country, not just better military equipment, but it is also helping the indigenous manufacturing ecosystem by producing some of the components or some of the submarines indigenously. Now, just as a follow-up project of this Project 75, Project 75I has been proposed, or it was introduced in 2017. I stands for India, or popularly it is also sometimes called as indigenization, right? So this is basically an initiative where India is planning to indigenize the next phase of submarine manufacturing in our country. So what is the Project 75I? Under the Project 75I, first of all, it is going to be the biggest defense procurement deal to be signed ever. Under this deal, India may very likely, introduce the Scorpion class submarines further, but this time we are going to propose 100% or more indigenization. Not 100%, I'm sorry, more indigenization, right? So the objective of Project 75I is that we will still acquire 6 advanced submarines featuring next generation air independent propulsion system. What is air independent propulsion system? I'll explain this to you, don't worry, right? And this is going to be a successor to the Project 75, under which we acquired the Scorpion class submarines from France, right? Now, what are going to be the main objectives or the main takeaway of Project 75I? Because it is right now only in the proposal state. You can understand that DRDO has right now just submitted the proposal to the Cabinet Committee on Security, and it may take some more years to realize the actual release of the first submarine, right? So we are expecting to have 3 important features of the new attack submarines that India may develop under Project 75I. One is the stealth features. Stealth features basically enables any kind of military hardware difficult to detect. So we all understand that when it comes to surveillance, there are different types of surveillance systems that your enemy may be using, right? There are radar surveillance, there are sonar surveillance, right? There are nowadays LiDAR surveillance. So stealth is basically a type of technology which you can equip in order to make your military hardware somewhat invisible to the enemy surveillance system. There are various ways of doing this. We can change the material that we are using. We can change the design of the submarines. We can change the design of the ship. We can change the design of the aircrafts. Like you must have heard very recently, F-35 of USA, Sukhoi 57 of Russia, they were in news during the Aero India Expo, because these were the 2 stealth 5th generation fighter aircraft which were there, and there was some news regarding India purchasing them and such. So all of you can understand that stealth basically is a set of technology that once you imbibe in a military hardware, then that hardware becomes difficult to be detected by any surveillance system. So this is going to be the first feature of the Project 75I. Another feature of Project 75I is indigenization. Like I told you previously, we have to promote more and more indigenous manufacturing. Second feature is indigenization. A minimum of 45% will try to indigenize, and will try to increase it to up to 60% in the 6th submarine that we will release. So we will start with 45% indigenization in the first submarine, and we have a plan of extending it to almost 60% in the 6th submarine. And another important feature of the Project 75 is we have to support the micro, small and medium enterprises. You all understand that micro, small, medium enterprises, they provide the maximum employment in manufacturing sector of India, and they are the backbone of manufacturing sector of India, because you can understand they are able to manufacture things with the most minimal resources available. There is better resource allocation in MSME. We are able to see more efficiency of production in MSME, and they are somewhat more competitive because the system happens to be not riddled with a lot of formal chain of communication. So MSMEs, they are considered to be the backbone of manufacturing sector of India. So these are the 3 major objectives of the Project 75I. But there was one term in the previous slide, and that was air independent propulsion system. This air independent propulsion system is something which is expected to be manufactured indigenously in our country. That is one of the objective of the Project 75I. Now let me explain what is the air independent propulsion system. See, you all can understand, for any fuel to burn, you require oxygen. So without oxygen, no fuel ever burns. You require oxygen for fuel to burn. Now, when you're talking about a car that is running on ground, on the surface of the earth, it is possible that air is available in the vicinity, so the car can suck in all the air, and the fuel can start burning in the engine, right? And that's how the car may function. It will simply be breathing air from the surrounding. But the moment when you talk about a submarine is basically a ship that can go underwater. It's a submersible ship. It will submerge underwater, and when it submerges underwater, then it is supposed to start, you know, the propulsion system. Then it is going to propel, you know, further, and it will remain underwater. Now when the submarine is underwater, you know, oxygen becomes scarce. Oxygen becomes one of those factors which will not be available. So how does a submarine that goes underwater is able to propel itself? With diesel. So how that diesel is going to burn without oxygen? So what these air independent propulsion system do, they basically keep a small fuel cell. They basically keep a small fuel cell which takes the water from the surrounding, breaks that water into hydrogen and oxygen, uses that oxygen to fuel, you know, to add that, use that oxygen to add into the fuel, and essentially breaks down, you know, use that oxygen to burn the diesel, and that's how the diesel gets propelled. So an air independent propulsion system contains a diesel engine. It's going to be diesel powered, guys. It contains a diesel engine, but the oxygen from diesel engine comes with the help of a fuel cell, or you can say an electrolyzer that will break down hydrogen oxygen, right? And that's how the fuel cell will provide oxygen to the diesel engine. I hope you are able to understand, guys. An air independent propulsion system also can further be built by adding oxidizers with that of oxygen, with that of diesel. So when the diesel engine is burning, if you add a little more oxidizers at the time of the refueling itself, then also the oxygen burning efficiency can be added, and you may not require a fuel cell in that case. So there are either way how you can develop an air independent propulsion system. I hope you guys are able to understand. This is the first topic, but you guys can understand that this particularly is an initiative that is still at the proposal stage. So you can expect that in future we may have more discussions on Project 75, and in fact UPSC can also ask in the mains examination regarding the possibilities if a Project 75 is implemented, or in general they can ask questions regarding indigenization in defense technology, and where you can refer to Project 75 as an important initiative, right? If you read this small, you know, a phrase from the Hindu newspaper cutting here, so you can see that the design phase is expected to start in the next 3 years, with another 5 years for construction of the actual submarines. The project is aiming for 90 to 95% indigenous content, right? And the contract negotiations are going to start soon for separate deal to buy the 6 new submarines. So one can easily understand that these are going to be the proposals. But guys, here it says 90-95%. You can understand that on the official website of DRDO, you can, or in the other newspaper information, it is around 60%. I hope all of you guys can understand. So in either way, it is going to be more than 50% of indigenization. Then the second news that has been there in the past 1 week, it's a very important news. It's about the Microsoft new introduced quantum chip of Microsoft, quantum processor of Microsoft. It's called the Majorana 1. Majorana is the pronunciation for this particular quantum computing chip. It's called Majorana 1. And why this Majorana 1 is important. So all of you understand, I have talked about this previously also, that the future of computing is often considered to be around quantum computing. Quantum computing is often considered as the future of computing. All future computing applications, it may be seeing a paradigm shift when quantum computers are introduced. Now, what makes quantum computers exceptionally good? I hope you guys remember the previous conversation, but here also I'll answer this. When you talk about traditional computing, when you talk about traditional computers, a traditional computer normally works by creating bits of zeros and ones, right? A bit of 0 and 1 is normally created by turning on and off a transistor. So a traditional computer uses very small miniature transistors, and transistor is nothing but a kind of a switch. You can turn it on and off. So when a transistor is turned on, a computer would read this condition as 1. When the transistor is turned off, a computer would read this condition as 0. So a traditional or classical computer works by simply turning on and off a transistor, and this on and off condition is read by a transistor or by the computer as 0 or 1. The on condition is read as 1, the off condition is read as 0. This is simply what we have under, a simple classical computer. Whereas a quantum computer works by the principle of superposition. It works by the principle of superposition. And what happens in superposition? We basically have both 1 and 0 occurring at the same time. So when you compare a classical computer's bit with a quantum qubit, a qubit can perform, multiple times better than a classical processor. If a classical processor can produce 1 or 0 on different occasions, a quantum processor can produce 1 and 0 at the same time. It can produce 1 and 0 at the same time. So quantum computers are by far considered to be faster than a classical computer. But guys, what is the key for quantum computer is how a quantum computer produces 1 and 0. So how does it produce 1 and 0? So there are different organizations trying to create different types of quantum computers. I have previously also talked about Google Willow, which has been one of the recent quantum computers. In fact, today itself, Amazon has also released their first quantum chip. Now Microsoft has also entered in this race, and they have introduced their first quantum computer, that is, or quantum chip, called Majorana 1. So when from UPSC perspective, I don't see that UPSC would ask a very in-depth kind of a question that what exactly is the working principle of a quantum computer. They may not ask exactly about the working principle. Excuse me, guys. They may not ask about the actual working principle, but what they may ask is the race of quantum computing. What are the possible applications of quantum computing? What are the possible possible risk associated with quantum computing, which I said that I'll be covering it separately, in a series, right? Unfortunately, today I may not be able to do that, but next week we'll be discussing that, and I'll discuss everything about quantum computing, what risk it has, where does India stand in this, right? So Majorana 1 is one of the important initiatives. This is the image of the Majorana 1, and what makes this Majorana 1 and why it has been named Majorana? Actually, Majorana is a type of a fermion particle. It's a type of fermion particle. Fermions are basically those particles that carry mass. So in any atom, whatever particles that carry mass, they are referred as fermions. So Majorana happens to be a fermion type particle. And what is interesting about Majorana? In fact, Majorana is often considered as a quasi particle. It is not treated as a single particle. It is considered as a quasi particle. Why quasi particle? Because this particle has a different tendency to behave. It may not behave like a normal particle all the time. In fact, it behaves like its own antiparticle also at the same time. So it has a very unique kind of a behavior. Why does it has a behavior? That's meaningless because we haven't been able to understand that. But we have just discovered that there are certain particles inside an atom. Majorana is one of those particles. There's another particle called anyons, right? There's another particle called anyons, and anyons are also those particles which also behave somewhat like this. So these particles have a very unique kind of behavior, and because of their unique behavior, we can assign 0 and 1 to these particles on the basis of their behavior. And that's what creates the basics of the Majorana 1 quantum computer. So like I said previously, you have to create 1 and 0 to tell a computer or to make a computer understand what is the input that you're giving in. So if a particle that can naturally exist as 1 and 0 at the same time, then this particle becomes a very well suited particle for a quantum computer. So Majorana is a particle that naturally exists in two different states at the same time, and because it exists in two different states at the same time, you can assign the value 1 to one state and the value 0 to another state, and this makes the Majorana particle the best suited particle or the very favorable particle for the quantum computers. So Majorana is basically, so the peculiar property of Majorana makes them prime candidates for creating qubits that are remarkably resistant to the environmental noises. Environmental noises basically are those hurdles or those problems that you may face whenever you are using a practical quantum computer, so there are a lot of radiations in the environment. There's a lot of light and different types of particles are there. Those particles, when they interact with a quantum chip, and that also contains quantum particle, it may cause distortions. So Majorana particles are very well suited, and it creates a window for us which makes them completely insulated from any kind of outside disturbances. So that makes Majorana a very interesting choice. Now guys, there is one thing that I would like to tell you here, although I'll be talking about this in future as well. You guys have heard about semiconductors previously, right? All of you are aware about this word semiconductors. In fact, we have also talked about Shakti semiconductors in our previous focus weeklies. So we all know that semiconductors are the backbone of the current computing industry. Now for Majorana 1, the word is not semiconductors here. In fact, there is a word called topoconductors. Topoconductors may become a household name in future, like we are today talking about semiconductors. Topoconductors may become the next type of material. These are basically made up of topological conductors, or they are basically superconductors which have a different way of conducting. I don't think from UPSC point of view that is very important, that how these topoconductors work, but remember that topoconductors is one word which is often related to the next generation of quantum computing, right? So this is just a word that I would recommend that you guys remember, because if UPSC would want to confuse you sometime, they may use these kind of random jargons and you may feel a little confused. So remember, topoconductors are mostly related to quantum computings, right? Quantum computings, or sometime it may also be related to discovering new types of material, but quantum computing is one area where this word topoconductors may be used. But otherwise, I hope all of you have understood what makes Majorana a very interesting or a very capable particle for next generation quantum computers. Now guys, I'll move to the last topic of our discussion. The last topic is, guys, recently DRDO has successfully tested our naval anti-ship missile. It was previously also tested, if I'm not wrong, in the past 2-3 years ago. It was tested previously, but this time it has been retested with more accuracy. So let's talk about it. So DRDO and Indian Navy have tested its first anti-ship missile system. It is, first of all, what is the name? It's called Naval Anti-Ship Missile Short Range. So it's a short range missile which is capable of destroying a ship, right? It's capable of destroying a ship, right? It is the first indigenous air launched anti-ship cruise missile. A cruise missile is basically those missiles which have a net straight line trajectory, whose trajectory is more or less in a straight line. We call them cruise missiles. So it is the first indigenous air launched airship cruise missile, right? So this is an anti-ship cruise missile. So this is what we have about NASM. Now, what are the salient features of this missile? Now, this is the image of our naval anti-ship missile, short range. Now, what are the salient features? The first feature is, it is an indigenous imaging infrared. It has got an imaging infrared seeker. Infrared seeker means it follows the heat. It follows the heat signatures. So we all realize that when it comes to targeting a ship, we all understand ship has got an engine, ship has got propeller, ship has got a lot of moving parts which tends to create a lot of heat. So when we are trying to target a ship, and we know that the ship is a moving object, we fire this particular missile, and as the ship is moving, the missile will also change its trajectory as per the direction of the ship, because it will follow the heat signature of the ship. So it has got an indigenously developed imaging infrared seeker. Imaging infrared seeker means that it will not just be seeking the moving target, but it will also be sharing the images in a way so that you can learn better about the moving target. It is expected to replace the Sea Eagle missile. Sea Eagle missile is an already used, already being deployed anti-ship missiles by the Indian Navy, and these missiles have already been declared to be obsolete. So they are going to, so the NASM of India is going to replace the Sea Eagle missiles of Indian Navy. Their range is around 60 kilometers. Their speed is around 0.8 Mach. 0.8 Mach means the speed is expected to be subsonic. We call it subsonic. Subsonic means it is less than the speed of sound. Speed of sound, we often refer it as 332 meters per second, and subsonic means that the speed is lesser than the speed of sound, right? 0.8 Mach is the expected speed, and it is less than the speed of sound. It can carry a conventional warhead of 100 kilograms. Remember, it is not a nuclear capable missile. It's expected to carry a 100 kilogram conventional warhead. And what makes it even more capable is its its capability of sea skimming. What is sea skimming, guys? Basically, it means that a missile or an aircraft can fly at a very low altitude, just above 5 meters, just above 5 meters from the sea surface. It can manage to fly at its maximum speed. And guys, what advantage we have when something flies at such a low altitude, and that too at such a high speed? The benefit is that when you keep a very low altitude and you can manage to fly at your maximum speed, you remain difficult, you remain undetected for many or various types of high altitude radars. See, normally radars are used for high altitude surveillance. So if you are capable of flying at your maximum speed at just 5 meters, then you will have a very strong capability of remaining hidden from radars and other surveillance systems. So that makes the missile even more capable. So this particular missile is, remember one point, that it was air launched. This was an air launch missile. Air launch missile means it was launched by a helicopter. This video was also shot and released. So it was a helicopter launch missile, and you can see that the missile was successfully launched and tested. So remember this. This was one of the recent achievements of DRDO and the Indian Navy. And this is what we have here, guys. So in today's class, just 3 topics were there to be discussed. I will talk about quantum computing in the next class, and we'll also be looking at some of the important current affairs of this week in the next class itself. All right, guys, that was everything for today. All the best.